Hmm. Oh, this looks good. Yeah, that could help me be more historical. And yeah, okay, wow, look at all this really historical information these guys got. And this is exactly what I'm looking for. Or I could just make an infantry division with 3.5 times as much artillery as a historical German division. But I wonder how effective a division like that would be. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Counterfactual Gaming, the gaming channel where if there's something historical to do in a video game, we don't do it. Now, before we get started, I'd just like to say if you're enjoying the content you're seeing, go ahead and drop a like and a sub on the channel and the video. And if you have any suggestions for other things that I should be doing, go ahead and leave a comment down below telling me what you think and what you want to see. And if you have any questions about what actually historically happened, go ahead and leave a comment down below and I'll try and answer your question. Today we're going to be taking it back old school. And I don't mean World War II old school, I mean Hearts of Iron 4 old school. I've done a lot of odd, weird things on this channel. Weird, goofy challenges, things that are very counter to history. But today we're going to be doing something that's counterfactual but historical because it's something that we used to do when we were playing the game in earlier iterations of it. What I mean is, I'm going to be using a meta all the way back from when Hearts of Iron 4 was still a very new game. I'm going to be using the 40 width infantry division meta that utilizes 4-line artillery battalions and superior fire doctrine. Now, a lot of players are probably thinking to themselves, like, wait, when was this the meta? And when I say that this was the meta, I'm not even talking about multiplayer games. I'm talking about this was the meta that a number of players, including myself, sort of invented before anyone even had a chance to play a lot of multiplayer games. Right when Hearts of Iron was still a new game. There were no DLCs, there were no music packs, nothing like that had happened yet. We just had the base game to play with, and we're like, what would be a good infantry division? Oh, well, why don't we stack firepower from artillery battalions? So when I say I want to use an old school 40 width infantry division with lots of artillery, this is what I'm talking about right here. Take a look at what I got in the designer. Okay? It's 40 width, which isn't anything resembling optimal today because of width changes that were made in some past updates. It's got 4-line artillery and a whole bunch of line infantry, plus some support companies. See, I've got the AA, the log, the support artillery, and the engineers. Now, I've taken this screenshot from right at the day France falls. I haven't had a chance to put in rocket artillery. When rocket artillery becomes available, and I will be pushing to that tech at some point, they will receive rocket artillery as well in a support slot. But this is the basics of what I'm talking about. This division utilizing superior firepower. Now, this division is suboptimal in a whole bunch of ways. It's a supply hog compared to its soft attack. It doesn't utilize org as well as something in the 20 to 24 width range would do. And you could probably better spend the IC that I put on artillery into things like tanks or planes or something else. But when the game came out, this template was one of the effective templates. Multiplayer shifted the way that we understood the meta once some players got enough multiplayer games under their belt. But even when I started multiplayer, I started using these divisions because the one advantage they had is that all their soft attack and all their hard attack would be concentrated on a single enemy. This is also why I used like big fat 40 width panzer divisions back in the day as well. And this was before they had coordination percentages and all that sort of stuff. But you could guarantee that each hour this division would throw all its firepower at one single enemy division and try and knock it out. As opposed to having 2 or 3 or 4 divisions occupying the same width as this division and scattering their shots all over the enemy front. A secondary advantage is that as you progress through superior firepower, and you can tell here that by the fall of France, I haven't made as much progress because Germany starts over here at mobile warfare, and Germany doesn't have a theorist that will actually give a bonus to superior firepower. So if you're not doing mobile warfare as Germany, you don't get any like cost reductions. But anyway, I haven't gotten as far as I want to, but as you go through this tree, the firepower increases a whole bunch, but also you go integrated support and you get a whole bunch of extra org from your support companies. And so these 40 width divisions, for all of their disadvantages, when the game came out, they were really robust and capable of just obliterating smaller formations while having enough defense and enough hit points. You can see the hit point stat over here to resist incoming damage. I do want to draw your attention, though, to supply. See, the supply use is kind of high for an infantry division, and when I start to head east against the Soviets, you're going to see why this is not an optimal division to use anymore. Now, as we see here in this fast montage, Poland doesn't give us any trouble using these divisions, and they shouldn't give us any trouble. We still have solid supply because we're fighting essentially on our own territory. Yes, I know we're invading Poland, but we're initiating that attack from high infrastructure German territory. So I do attack France with these divisions as well. We knocked the Netherlands out so quickly I didn't even get it on film. Then I set up for my attack on the French. Using no special tactics, I'm just going to send Rommel and the Panzers through Luxembourg to Sedan and try and take Paris, while my heavy-duty infantry divisions just clobber the Belgians and French into submission. You see that there's nothing atypical here. The French, again, fail to cover Sedan, and they fail to cover Paris because the AI just sometimes does that. We even saw that on a live stream earlier this week. And then something weird happens. I get the formation of Vichy event, I get the flight of Hesse, but France has not actually capitulated. That must mean my infantry divisions are so awesome that the French government just signs the armistice without even considering whether they've been occupied or not. So I win the entire thing. I'm the best Hearts of Iron player ever. Well, that's enough of that. Let's take a look at Barbarossa. Now, for Barbarossa, I have 5 full armies of 24 infantry divisions in the 40 width 4 artillery format, ready to go to attack the Soviets. Now, I've boosted the Soviets as far as they can be boosted in the game, so it's going to be an uphill climb the whole way to defeat them. I also have a number of panzer divisions under Rommel that are going to be used to attack the Soviets, to help get some encirclements. As you will see, the closer we get to Moscow, Leningrad, and Stalingrad, the less and less use I have for panzer divisions. I also have like a ridiculous number of aircraft to throw at the situation as well. Now, nothing super interesting happens in the opening stages of Barbarossa, other than the fact that I bombard the Red Army to death using tanks and artillery. But it is a setup for a big encirclement that's going to happen a little bit later. In September of 41, I begin an offensive to try and cut the Red Army in half. And as you can see, it kind of goes fairly well. We have the requisite air superiority. I've got enough tanks to make it viable. And the Red Army can't really do anything to stop the infantry divisions that I have. They should be able to, but they can't. I just want it noted for the record that it took so long to clear those pockets that there's now snow on the ground and we're going to have a much harder time reaching Moscow and Stalingrad. That delay from clearing those pockets means that I'm unable to make the play for Moscow until the beginning of December. And as you can see, we indeed have snow in the way, but even a cursory reading of the front will show that we have massive supply problems. What I haven't shown you is about 15 minutes of game footage of me just building railways, partially to make some supply centers work better, but also because even when we take Moscow, we need solid rail links between Moscow and Berlin in order to make use of it as a supply hub. So what you can't see right now is Germany is not building any MIC. I'm just literally building swarms and swarms of railways to improve railway connections heading back to the west. This is a project I had started earlier, but it took on a new earnestness as I made this play for Moscow, and I realized that even taking Moscow wasn't going to fix a lot of my supply problems. It might damage Soviet logistics, but I need better rail connections all over the place in order to make full use of it. And you can see here my panzers are running out of fuel as they just go a couple of tiles. Combination of weather and poor supply. And my infantry divisions are just having to brute force their way to Moscow. We are making progress, but if you can just look at combats and you look at the interface, you can tell that the huge supply draw of these fat infantry divisions with masses of artillery, it's really sort of lowering the offensive potential of the German army in general. And I finally make the attack on Moscow, and I get a little bit lucky, and they are not able to cycle in enough divisions before I run out of org. But even here, you can tell that most of the divisions that are attacking Moscow have low org, low supply indicators, and are not up to full strength. And with that, Moscow falls. Leningrad has already fallen, but Stalingrad hasn't been taken yet. And at this point, I have to stop all offensive operations and take a several-month break getting everything fixed. Let me show you how bad the German army looks at this point. Here's the save game I took at the beginning of February after the front had kind of settled down a bit. You can tell the Soviets are trying to make some counterattacks, but the front is relatively stable, and we can take a look at what's been going on. The Soviets have inflicted 1.2 million casualties on me, while I have inflicted 3.7 million casualties on them. I did slap a collab on them, but they are not ready to surrender yet. That looks good, but let's go to theater view, set it to the 8 months that the war has been fought, and take a look at what's been happening. I've lost 99,000 infantry kits, and 11,000 artillery just from combat losses. We're not even counting attrition against the Red Army. Now, the Red Army's lost more equipment than I have. They've lost 350,000 kits. They've lost 16,000 artillery. They lost 5,000 medium tanks here. They lost 7,100 medium tanks, and those are horrendous losses. I mean, it looks like I've lost a ton of medium tanks, but with my production, 2,200 medium tanks is nothing. We haven't lost too many to attrition, and we're getting most of those back. But the real story here is that this number is really kind of high, and this number is really kind of high. This division template I'm using is really not optimized for this. Supply issues are making life difficult, and if we take a look at my stockpiles, we can tell that I've not set up production correctly for this either. You would think that artillery would be my shortage, but I'm actually sitting on way more artillery than I need while I'm incurring a huge deficit of infantry kits. Rocket artillery is in a deficit, but that's only because those production lines haven't gotten up to full speed yet in comparison to the amount that I need. And I do need some more factories on anti-aircraft guns. We did just lose a bunch. But I didn't actually set my factories up well for this. You can see I've added a bunch of factories to my infantry kits recently, but this is going to take a while. But I should have long ago swapped one of these production lines for an infantry kit production line because I just have way too much artillery. I also have a ton of extra tanks and airplanes, but that's because I just simply can't use them. And I do have a surplus of armored cars, but I'm not quite ready to implement them into occupation forces yet. So what I do here for the next several months is fix the supply network, try to replenish stockpiles, and prepare for the attack on Stalingrad. Because I know that if I can take Stalingrad and a few other VPs, we should be good to go to defeat the Soviet Union. Now we zoom ahead to July of 42 and I make my play for Stalingrad. You can tell that I have poor supply along the entire front in this area, and I should tell you I haven't taken Baku yet. So Soviet oil is not in my hands. I'm not actually running out of fuel, but that is a set of VPs I do need to make some progress on in order to complete the capitulation of the Soviet Union. But Stalingrad is the main target of this. You can tell supply is so bad that if you watch, I have to move some panzer divisions off the front so they can actually resupply with fuel. And in addition to continuously upgrading the rail networks as we move forward, again, I need to have sufficient rails linked up to Stalingrad to actually move the required supplies to it when I take it. But I am doing a large, broad front offensive along the entire front using a field marshal plan. Not because I want to take a whole bunch of useless real estate, but because it forces the Soviets to keep troops in those other areas, and they can't try to focus in the area of Stalingrad or Baku. And we do have the final fall of Stalingrad. in July of 42, but the Soviets still have not capitulated despite having a collaboration government slapped on them. I need to finish taking Baku and a couple of other VPs. And it's the fall of Baku in September, coupled with seizing some of the other VPs, that nets me capitulation of the Soviet Union and takes us to a peace conference. Now, I wonder what terms I should give to the Soviets. Ah, I know. The perfect set of terms. Nothing better than a white peace after millions have died. But let's go back to before the capitulation and take a look at some data and see what the war looked like for the past 12 months. Now we have here a save I made just a few days before capitulation. Let's just take a look at losses over the past 12 months. Obviously, Soviet losses are absolutely terrible. You will notice that German losses look a lot better than they did before the fall of Moscow and Stalingrad. And that's a function of the fact that there just isn't as much of a Red Army to defeat. And it's in a much worse position than where we were before. But if we take a look at things like manpower lost, you'll notice that Germany's lost a significant amount of manpower fighting the Soviets. I normally would not lose this much manpower getting to the capitulation point with the Soviet Union. And I would have inflicted probably greater manpower losses on the Soviet Union. Now, having said that, if we go take a look at stockpiles, you'll notice that I did rearrange my production, and we are fixing some of our production problems, but we still have significant shortages. And this is part of the whole why pushing with infantry gets to be kind of expensive issue. Leaving aside the silliness of having a 40 width infantry division with a crap ton of artillery, when we're doing a lot of pushing with infantry, you end up seeing large losses of these kinds of equipment, and you end up having to devote more and more factories to things like support equipment, basic infantry kits. And again, I should have cut the number of factories on artillery and spread those around a bit. I have all these tanks that I can't use. I have all these planes that I can't use. But I don't have enough rifles to issue out to my troops. Although, in fairness to me as a terrible player, there is no more Soviet Air Force. And it's not like the British have an Air Force that matters. They have a 4.7K Air Force, whereas the Luftwaffe is sitting at 12,000 planes, and I have 5.7K fighters in the stockpile because I just literally don't have anything I can do with them right now. So, like, I have wiped out enemy air forces to the point where I have way too many factories on that. But leaving that aside, this whole pushing with infantry divisions with large amounts of artillery, it's possible. I can defeat a fully boosted Soviet Union, but boy is it inefficient. If we take a look at the supply view, there is not a single place on the front where we have anywhere close to reasonable supply, except here where we just literally have a gap in our lines. And while you would expect poor supply in areas like here or here, this should be in better supply as I make the push to Baku. Also, hilariously, I never managed to take Kerch. They're able to supply themselves there, and I've just had a bunch of Romanian divisions and some panzers just tied them down, and we never actually took it. That's just me being an idiot. So how do we assess the effectiveness of one of the oldest metas in Hearts of Iron 4? Well, I mean, you can win with it, and on paper, with superior firepower implemented, it's a pretty darn good division in certain situations. But in actual practice, this division is just, it's not as granular. It imposes supply penalties that you really shouldn't be dealing with. It messes up production in ways that don't benefit you. And to be perfectly honest, using them is a lazy way to fight. It's a press go on the field marshal and just let your divisions push ahead. But I will say this about this division. And while I don't think it's really suited for defense due to how Withe and Org work, it would be hilarious to reverse this strategy, run the Soviets with superior firepower and divisions like this, and sit them on the Riga, Kiev, Dnipropetrovsk line behind those rivers and just shell the Germans to death with massed artillery barrages. Or, instead of using superior firepower, make the logistics better by going through the mass assault tree through deep battle and get all the little supply reductions there. And I think that about wraps this video up. Been trying to make these a little bit shorter and more condensed for ease of viewing, and I think we may have succeeded in that endeavor this time around. I did get some requests to talk about training cadres, which I think I will do next week, and instead of doing something goofy, I'll show you in a video how using training cadres can help you get trained manpower for use in real divisions, because Hearts of Iron does not have a reserve manpower mechanic. But I'll show you that later. I hope your day is better than mine, because we have terrible weather where I live today. If you notice my voice changes because I decided to look out the window for a second. But I hope where you live, you're having a pleasant day.